Hey guys, it's Sam and this is Top 5 Wednesday. If you're new to Top 5 Wednesday, I will leave a link to the Goodreads group down below for topics and such. This week's topic is our favorite villains. Now we've done this topic a few times before, the most recent time I think being in 2016, so I will leave that video of mine down below because I'm not going to repeat villains. So let's just get it out of the way. My favorite forever villain is the Darkling from the Grisha trilogy, but I've mentioned him in the previous video, so these are all new villains. So this isn't necessarily like all the villains I love or even like the definitive top 5 list. It's just the top 5 of the like newer villains that I really enjoy. Yeah? Number 5 is Corian from Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This story and the relationship between the villains and the characters in here is so compelling. Claire Legrand does main character villain dynamics really, really well. I did a whole video talking about how main character and villain dynamics are a trope that I really enjoy, so I'll leave that linked on the screen for you to check out. So it's kind of a toss-up between this book and Winterspell, which is another villain that I really enjoy with the dynamics and everything, but this is a series, so I feel like this will evolve even more. And Corian is like a deceptive, dark, insidious villain that is very compelling and that kind of attractive to the main character type villain, and compelling as far as like powers and like calling to like and all of that kind of stuff that's very Darkling-esque. Highly enjoyed him and I'm looking forward to his evolution throughout the series as well. Next we have the Red Queen from the Queen of the Tyrling series by Erica Johansson, and you find out more about her in the second book in the series, and she's also very compelling because of the main character and her dynamics and kind of their like yin and yang and balance and how they understand one another. She's a villain that I feel like you don't necessarily love in the way that you like agree with her, but you definitely relate to her and you see how she got to where she was, and I really find those villains more compelling than just your I'm bad because I'm bad type villain. Number 3, we have like all of the villains from the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence, the first book being Red Sister. I know I'm talking about this series all the time, but it's one of my currently running favorite series, so just deal with it because I'm going to be screeching about it until the series ends. But all of the villains in here are really interesting and awful. And a lot of the villains are like these political type villains, and they're villains that you just see abusing power, and in that way they just are so realistic, and so the main characters have to really outwit them, not only with like physical prowess but also with their minds, and I just love those kinds of dynamics. But the villains are awful. They're so, you hate them so much, and it's hard to read sometimes, especially if the main characters aren't doing so hot, but man, does it make the villains really compelling. Speaking of compelling villains, for number 2 we have Victor and Eli from Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I've done a full review on this earlier this month, so I'll leave that linked on the screen. Oh my god. Okay, so Eli is a villain I love to hate because he's awful. He's basically like a religious zealot, and he's doing horrible things for a reason that he justifies in his mind but is completely unjustifiable, and is just really interesting. Like, you just love to hate him. Serena is another character in here who would be defined as a villain, and she's also very compelling in her dynamic with Eli. And then you have Victor, who's like technically the protagonist, and he's also a villain. He identifies as a villain. He does bad things, but he does bad things for like an actual pretty good reason. He's also he's a sociopath. He's great. And their dynamics are great. Their competition with one another is great. They're these kinds of, they were originally friends, and they are friends that have this competition level with each other, which I think is very realistic and compelling as well, because I feel like at some point in everyone's lives they have that friend that they're like sort of competitive with, whether that's good or bad, and these two are just very interesting. You either love them or you love to hate them, or a mix of both. And number 1, you probably have my favorite villains in other media, and that is the Reapers from Mass Effect. So the Reapers are the overarching villain in all 3 Mass Effect games, and they are like sentient alien robot, sort of. I'm not going to go into it because right now it wouldn't make sense. People would be like, that's stupid. But they basically want to like take over the world by turning everything into them in a really creepy way, and they have some of the best lines. Like, one of the first Reapers that you see in the game says that he's the vanguard of your destruction, which is terrifying in the actual game. And later on, when stuff starts happening and they're like turning different people into Reapers, all of those things that you then have to fight are the creepiest fucking shit. ever, and they're just very interesting because they're villains that are sort of villainous for their own reasons that don't really make sense to humans because they're machines, and they're really cool. The Reapers are some of my favorite, most compelling villains, scariest villains. They're so cool, and I love them. They're like my favorite sci-fi villains ever. So that is it for some of my favorite villains. Like I said, there's way more, and there's previous videos about this and all of that. But comment down below, let me know some of your favorite villains. I know the Darkling's gonna be on there, but like, give me some villains that you don't hear about all the time. You know, like I want some of those like undercover, not as famous villains. Let me know those. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.